Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke, and I'm joined again by a friend of the show, Cameron the Molerat Allgeier. Cameron, welcome.
How's it going?
Hey, Cam. Well, it is wonderful to see you back on the show. You had been matched up with your same opponent for 247 Fighting Championships going in to their doubleheader November show. That fight ended up not happening, and now you're back at it, still matched up against Justin Patton, still for the same amateur bantamweight belt, which will also be your first title belt. And so we're just getting you back on. We had talked to you before that. You talked a lot about staying busy, going down to Virginia and fighting on a different card and all of that. So catch us up on what's been going on with you since November Thanksgiving.
Yeah, since then, I sat out for a little bit there. Last month, I think. Went over to Philly, fought for CFFC, and as soon as that fight was over, I was on the drive back, and I was getting texts and calls from Ryan, 247 promoter, and so I called him back, one of the rest stops, and he's like, "So how you feeling? You good? You ready to go? You want to sign this contract?" Like, "Yeah, all right, let's hop right back into it then."
Yeah, well, let's talk about the CFFC fight. I think that was your first. Was that your first three-minute round fight?
That was the second. That one in Carolina. That was 3-3s as well.
And so walk us through the CFFC fight there. I know that was a closed. They did it as a closed fight with no fans, and it was streamed on UFC Fight Pass. So that's one of the reasons why they were still having an event. And you got it in during a time where most other people weren't doing an event at all because of COVID. So kind of do a wrap up on that fight, how that go for you, and what did you see as being beneficial for taking that fight?
Yeah, always staying active is good. I've yet to actually fight with no crowd. That the one in South Carolina, that was pretty much a full show. They have a lot looser regulations there. And then the one in CFFC was a limited audience, but there was enough people that you still got that crowd feedback. So I haven't got to experience that yet. I'm hoping there's never a circumstance where I have to again.
Just skip that experience. You don't need it.
Yeah, don't need it. But CFC, it was nice to stay active. It's a nice big promotion. You get a lot of more eyeballs on you than most local shows. The cage there is huge. I don't know if we talked about that last time, but the cage is massive. It's probably twice the size of the 247 one. There's just so much space. It's hard to cut people off and push them into the cage. So that was a unique experience there. It's I got the little cage at the gym that we train in, and then you go in that, and it's like, oh man, this is open mat. There's I could barely see to the other side of the cage. It's so big. But that kid, he was a tough opponent. Christian Bobby, he was tough, good wrestler. We looked up his wrestling after the fact, and I think he plays in New Jersey, which it's a tough state, especially in the lower weight classes. New Jersey's real tough. He had good hands, came from a good gym. You saw, if you watched the fights last week in that Pat Sabatini, he trains with him. Good camp, good kid. Was able to come away with the win, and just staying active. I think that's the best part about it.
Well, and speaking of, Pat Sabatini finally made his UFC debut. He had been on deck for doing that a while, and then a couple of his fights fell through, so it was great. I know him from my time out in Philadelphia, so hats off to Pat Sabatini for finally making his UFC debut and getting a big win, and he's going to do a lot of good things in the featherweight division out there. But you were mentioning that your opponent for the CFFC card trained at a good gym. Although I said at the beginning of this, the Gorilla House gym is becoming very popular on this show. And not only on this show, but for 247 Fighting Championships and in regional MMA, not just at Pittsburgh. So talk to us about what it's like. I think you've always trained at Gorilla House, I believe, ever since I announced your debut. I think you've always been training out of Gorilla House. So how is that growing? What's it been like going from brand new in MMA to now being seasoned, undefeated, and in your first title fight?
Yeah, as long as I've been fighting, I've been at Gorilla House. Whenever I was a kid, I would train here and there, but there's a big difference between doing kids classes and doing a fight team class. Um, but Gorilla House is nice because it's a small gym, and I think that's a trend that we're seeing people go back to is that small gym, getting away from like the Jackson Winks, the Tri-Stars. There's still a couple really big camps that are doing well, but that individual attention
Yeah,
is something that's hard to beat. Like there's a trade-offs. Like we don't have a ton of fighters, but at the same time, everybody we have is a quality fighter. Everybody who trains at Gorilla House is good. We don't have just people who are just bodies. There's a lot of individual attention. We have great coaching. Darren Cassidy, striking coach, he was, I can't think of the number, but he had a number next to his name, which is pretty impressive. Anytime you could get to that level. Ray, great jiu-jitsu coach. He's one of the guys too who, whenever he trained, like all his life, he trained for like a self-defense application, which not the bash jiu-jitsu guys, but you see it. People go, they'll pull guard, they'll go for the leg locks, and they're getting beat up the whole time. But in a jiu-jitsu tournament, they would be winning. So just a guy who understands that concept, and just they're a good match too for all of us there. Like their coaching style just matches with us really well. So just really helps. Great gym for that.
absolutely. Well, and you mentioned Darren Cassidy, and obviously his son, a championship, state champion wrestler, made his debut. Caden Cassidy, back at the 247 fight that you weren't able to fight on that fight. So clearly, the Gorilla House Gym has great coaches. Sid was on the show. I love having Sid on the show, and I know that those are her parents that run the gym. Plus, she's a big part there as well. And so, and Ethan Goss, you've always mentioned him when you're on. So, what's been something, particularly with the fight that you were training? You were training for Justin Patton, and from what I see, he has a good record, but he's coming back after a little bit of time off. And you've done the exact opposite. So, do you see that as being an advantage for you in the sense that you've been obviously much more of an active fighter? Even in the year of COVID, you've had 2 fights since COVID launched. So, do you think that helps you coming into this fight May 22nd?
It might. I don't believe in ring rust personally. I just think it's one of the things people forget what it's like to have to grind, have to push hard. So they kind of take a foot off the gas in training camp, and whenever they come back, they're like, "Oh man, that's right. I need to go." I don't think that's something Patton did. He has training partners. He got Karma in the UFC, John's in Bellator. He's been through it. So there's no way he is not training hard. He's had 2 years just to develop as a fighter, whereas my last 2 years, I mean, all my fights are out there. You can see exactly what I've been doing. So it just depends on how he thinks ring rust is. Like if he's somebody who buys into that, then that's an advantage for me. If not, it might be an advantage for him. I don't think it's going to make a difference in the fight personally. I think either whoever is going to win would have won if Patton fought, a month ago, 2 months ago, or, if I had a 2-year layoff, I don't think it would have changed anything.
Well, I think that's a very honest and good feedback. And I always like to ask questions like that because you hear terms like ring rust and all those type things bannered about all the way up at the UFC level. And I think at your level, it's just nice to see that you already have an opinion on that. You already have a mindset. And I think that goes to if you ever have a long extended period away, you already are telling yourself you need to grind, you need to work. And like you said, you gave your opponent their credit because he trains at the academy with 2 very high-end athletes in Kama and John. And from what I know about them and their camp, just like the Gorilla House, they really pride themselves in making everybody better. And so that's obviously a big part. Speaking of making everybody better, is there somebody in the gym at the Gorilla House right now that maybe has fewer fights than you, or maybe hasn't even made their debut yet, that you're excited to see them as they develop, even if they're not necessarily somebody who's competing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot right now. It's one of the problems. Like, there's only so many fights you could get right now. So there's some guys who are sitting out at our gym who are just waiting. Monte, he has a fight coming up on 247. That dude is a workhorse. He will, wake up at 5 a.m., go in, hit pads with Brad Mountain. Then, he'll go to a boxing class in the middle of the day, and then he'll come in and he'll, do the MMA class with us. I'm very intrigued to see how he does. Training's one thing, but under lights is different. So if he puts it on under lights, like I know he can, that's going to be a kid to watch out for. He was a D1 wrestler. But like, as far as like people pushing in the gym, it's you get different pushes from everybody. Like some people they're just all around, give you a push everywhere. Ethan beats me up everywhere. Some days, other days I beat Ethan up. Don't let him tell you otherwise. Sid's a great striker. Sid hits hard for a girl. She hits hard in general, but you got to put that asterisk for a girl just so like that.
Tick her off. Yeah, just to tick her off. Well, speaking of Sid striking, she was just telling me on an interview we did that she got brought in to do striking with the UFC fighter.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's an exciting thing, I think, for anybody, whether it's you or in this case, Sydney, to already be attracting, particularly since Sydney's a female and a southpaw, getting the looks of training with a pro UFC level and winning UFC fighter is a big deal. So
yeah, every time that people like bring her up, whenever I'm doing an interview, it's hard not to bring her up. she is a good fighter. But I keep telling people, like, this is one of them things where you get to see somebody who is going to be 100% is going to be in the UFC, not just in the UFC. She's going to be top 5, if not champion, but easily top 5 whenever she makes it there. And, people get to go out. People in Altoona get to make an hour ride.
Yeah.
$50, which they would spend on, a pay-per-view anyway. They get to watch her in person. It's one of them things. It's going to be special to watch coming up, and it's nice to have that in the gym. Somebody that is going to be that elite. Seeing the stuff that she does, trying to, pick apart what I'm capable of doing from that. And the same, like Ethan's another one where he's really good. He's just, sometimes he puts it on the cage and sometimes he doesn't. Last two he just hasn't. But in the gym, that dude is an animal. He is very, very good. So both of them, I mean, just doing striking rounds with them, it's rough, man. It's rough. I come from a wrestling background. They're bouncing, moving. I think they're throwing punches, and then a kick slips up, hits me in the noggin. Like they're good.
Well, what incredibly kind and wonderful things you have to say about your teammates. And I think that's something that somebody listening or watching that doesn't know MMA a lot, I bring this up a lot on this show, Cam, is they see a fight like we, had a couple days ago for UFC. They see one fighter walk in and one fighter walk in, opponent-wise, and they forget that there's an entire gym. There's an entire, not only the fighters that train, but also the fighters' families, everybody else who gets involved in the process. But one thing you brought up, which is, I think, a beautiful plug for 247 Fighting Championships and regional MMA in general, but especially 247 Fighting Championships, is that this is a big deal that fight fans get to watch live MMA, amateur and pro. But like you gave a great shout out for the amateur. There's multiple amateur belts going to be going down May 22nd. I don't think the exact number's been released yet. There's several. You're fighting for one. Sydney's fighting for one. I know Cole Masick's fighting for one. So that's 3 right there. And there might even be another one. So you're talking about multiple. And I think for fans, they don't always understand that when you watch UFC, you actually need to watch the Sydney Blonde Demon Rosses or the Molerat. I don't know too many Molerat nicknames out there, so I think
Only
your
one.
nickname's safe. Oh, you're the only one.
The only one I know of.
Your nickname is safe. So just because we're on the nicknames for a second, how did you get the Molerat nickname? Because it really is unique, and I think you can ride that bad boy all the way up to t-shirts and everything. So.
I fought that nickname tooth and nail, but once it was going around in the gym, it stuck. I could not get rid of it. So what happened was that fight, the second fight I had against was it Clay Bucci? I forgot my contacts.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I was like freaking out in the back. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to do this blind, And one coach is like, dude, you train blind every single day. Just go in there, squint around, just try to grab them. So I'm in there, I'm squinting, I can't see what's going on. Like I couldn't see. That was the one where we touched gloves and immediately threw something. I came out, I was like, man, I couldn't even see. Like I thought he put his hand up to touch, maybe he didn't. And Aiden, he was like, yeah, I saw you squinting in there. You're hairless and couldn't see nothing, feeling around. You know what you look like? A naked mole rat. You're a little pink, it's pale. I was like, yeah, I guess so. And from that, everybody ran with it. Like I went home and they started a Facebook thread on it, and people were just photoshopping different mole rats. They put the glasses on them. They put little MMA gloves on it, and yeah, from that point it was set in stone. Everybody at the gym kept calling me that. Ethan kept threatening to put it down on the paper for the commentators without me knowing. I was like, you know what? I might as well embrace it now. No getting past it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a few nicknames that come up for the commentators, me being one that we double check on. And I'm not sure if we double checked on the Molerat. I think we knew that you were going by that at that point. So we called you. But yeah, every once in a while there's nicknames that's like, is this serious? Is it joking? Because you never know if a coach is trying to pull a fast one. When
my favorite of the amateur guys right now is that Alan Liu, Chinese disappointment.
I'm so glad.
I saw that one. I was like, "There's no way this is real."
And I'm glad you brought him up, because that's who I was thinking of, Alan Liu. That he literally does go by the Chinese disappointment. He's very happy with that nickname. But the first time we saw it, it happened to be the first ever 247 Fighting Championships fight. We didn't call him it. Myself and Bubba, we didn't call him it, because we just looked at each other and went, we're not doing this. Like now we do, because we know it. Like I've asked him directly, I've talked to him. Had I had a little bit more interaction, it's the first fight. We were just focused on putting out a good product. But yeah, it's a bit of a joke with his parents and some other things, but there are some funny nicknames. But when you talk about, and I don't know if I've ever talked about contacts with a fighter, but obviously you wear glasses, many people. Have you ever had issues with contacts in a fight? So let's say you're wearing your contacts. I know, having worn contacts before, they flip and sometimes get lodged and all types of stuff. Has that ever happened in a fight? Is that a concern for you?
I got him knocked out before. I forget what fight. It was only one fight. One got, grappling exchange, got pulled out. But I mean, it's just, they're nice to have as long as you have them. But like I said, I train without my, they pop out so much, it's financially irresponsible to wear them to every practice. So I just wear them for the fights. If they pop out, it's no big deal, but it is nice. It is nice to have them. But yeah, not a big deal.
Well, that also brings up something that'll be a follow-up question. And that is, Cam, what do you think is the biggest thing that you like? Because when it comes to training, and this is what people don't always see, is you will train 15 times, maybe 30 times as much, maybe more than that, as you'll be in a cage, right? And so like you were just mentioning, it doesn't make sense to put your contacts in every time you're training, because you're training for hours a day, whereas the fight's short. So what do you look for the most when you're going into a grinding session, which you just did a couple hours ago, right before this interview, and you have a couple hour session coming up? What do you look forward to most in practice that's 2 or 3 hours versus in a fight, which is only 9 minutes? What's the most thing you look forward to in those grinding sessions?
I mean, it depends on the day. You know, some days you wake up and you're like, man, can't wait to go in there and strike or walk in. Man, I hope we're wrestling today. So I mean, I do this sport because I like all the aspects. But I mean, my thing is in training, I have to keep it fun. You know, like going in there and there's some guys who work out. Um, a lot of wrestling guys. I think this is like the biggest thing. Wrestling is very serious. You go in there and you practice, and it's like very competitive. It's I could not do that environment for a couple hour training sessions. You got to go in there, make jokes, have fun. Like me and Ethan, we'll talk trash back and forth the whole practice, but it keeps it light. Like we're doing a grinding session, but it stays competitive because we're like, oh man, I got you with that one. That would have put you out if I would have put more behind it, or stuff like that. Just keeping it light. I like training all aspects. It just depends on the day. But yeah, just keeping it fun, doing everything.
Well, that is a great mindset that both you and Ethan have, that you want to be competitive, pushing each other hard, but also still be enjoying it, still be fun. I think when you mentioned some of those bigger gyms, and obviously there's a few that are still very productive, but two of the fighters on Saturday's card, both who got big wins, Kamaru Usman and Rose Namajunas, are both trained by Trevor Whitman, who only has 3 athletes. He only trains 3 athletes. The other of them is Justin, the highlight Gaethje. So, and that struck me going into it, like smaller gyms with coaches that can really develop. And you're talking at the best of the best, 3 former champions, 2 current champions. When you're talking high level, to think that they're producing at their level with a very pared down small group around them, I think also shows sort of the value of a small team that's dedicated to you. But let's get into some predictions. Give you some opportunity to talk trash if you want to, but at least talk about what you see yourself doing. And of course, you don't have to talk trash, but what you see yourself doing May 22nd, and why people should come out to watch you, just like you made a great argument for why people should come out to watch the Blonde Demon with where she'll be going and all that. But why should people make the drive to Pittsburgh, to the Monroeville Convention Center May 22nd to see you, the Molerat, in action?
Yeah, it's really hard for me to make a prediction for this fight, just because I have no idea. Like, I don't know what Patton's like. I don't know anything about him. That's probably the most exciting thing about this fight too, is, I don't know. It's like the first fight all over again. That first fight, you're like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do. I don't know how he's going to do. What does he do? So for me, that's the most exciting part about this, is like, I know Patton's good. I know he's been training forever, and I know it's going to be a good fight. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a UFC caliber fight, like in terms of action, the pace that's going to be pushed, all that. We're fighting for a title. There's that extra little bit on it. And I mean, I was saying, I don't think it was with you. I think it was with somebody else. But I was saying my last fight, I went in there and I kind of felt like I was brought in to lose to the hometown guy. Going to Philly, that's Philly's guy. He's managed by that promotion, and it was, who's the best in Philly, me coming in or him. And I kind of feel the same way about this one, like who's the best Pittsburgh, and I think there's a lot of people who are wondering the same thing, because, amateur 135, I think it's really just me and Patton in Pittsburgh. So it's going to be who's the best there.
Yeah, I think that's a great insight, is that you are at the point where you are brought in because your record's good, because you're a tough fighter, and obviously CFFC gave you the opportunity and you took it and you won. So good for you. But I have had Aaron Jeffrey, you wouldn't probably know the name, but he's a CFFC champ, pro champ, very, very good at 185. But he lives and trains in Canada.
I think I actually watched that one.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah. Stud, just an incredible athlete. And I've had him on the show a couple times, and hats off. Everybody should be following. He's definitely going to go to the UFC. He's defended it, I think, now once or twice for CFFC. He's a great fighter, but by training in Canada, if your name's not GSP, most people don't really follow Canadian MMA. I think he said in all of his amateur and pro fights, he's had like one fight in Canada because he's always had to fly in for other promotions that want him to lose, you know.
Yeah.
But he makes the most of it. And I think that's kind of what you're doing too. Is obviously you're close enough to Pittsburgh. I think Gorilla House Gym. I don't want to speak for Ryan. I know that he considers Gorilla House Gym a big part of 247. You guys have like a home in the 247 Fighting Championship cage, and obviously you're cranking out fighters in there from Ethan to Caden, who I mentioned earlier, to Sydney, to you. So those are some significant things there. But yeah, it will really be to determine who the best Pittsburgh fighter is at that weight class. And I think that's why you want it to be a belt, right? You want the belt to mean something.
Yeah.
And so what does the belt mean to you? Let's kind of wrap up on that with a classic existential question of what would winning a belt mean to you versus winning in CFFC a couple months ago, and is there a difference?
I mean, for me, I think there is a slight difference. Just I know for, you know, my career, it's really, you know, fight's a fight, win's a win. It doesn't matter if you get, you know, a little medal after or not. But I mean, that is special. I think the fight is special. Like, Gorilla House is close enough for Pittsburgh, but I'm from Pittsburgh. You know, I grew up West End, Sheridan. You know, like my family, all of them still live down there. So I personally do feel like it's who's the best guy, and it's I don't want to be leaving somebody out if I'm missing. There's another 35er somewhere. I'm sorry, but from my eyes, it's you know, Patton's the guy who I always heard about being, you know, my weight class is him. You know, he had a string of bad luck. You know, needs another fight to go pro. You know, and in the meantime, you know, I came up, so it's gonna be that's what it means to me. See if I'm at that level to call myself one of the best. Even though it's only amateur, like whenever I go pro, obviously it starts all over, you know, back to the bottom of the deck. But yeah, that's it.
Well, that's why you're in this sport, to see if you're one of the best or the best. And I think you've sold me on the fight. If I wasn't already going to be there, I'd be there by what you said, because it really is about seeing there's amateurs that are going to be making their debut on the card, and they need people there to root them on no matter what. Because like you said, your amateur fight, your debut fight, that's that one fight you got to get out of the way. You know, you got to do it, win or lose.
Yeah.
You got to get in there. And so hats off to all the people making the debut. But you're at that other level of amateur, which is an elite amateur along there with Sydney, elite amateur who needs to fight the best to see if they're the best and to test the other opponent. And so hats off to you. Hats off to everybody at Gorilla House Gym. Thanks again for coming on the show. For everybody watching and listening, 247 Fighting Championships is going to do a doubleheader on May 22nd at the Monroeville Convention Center, just outside of Pittsburgh, at a 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. And I think fans need to get both and just make it a day. So thanks so much for coming on the show. Have a good one, the Molerat. Take care, bud. Bye-bye.